When we first see Luce in the Owl House, she's living in a world of wild fantasies, and her behavior is quite erratic and earns her a negative reputation at her school. Most notably, she spreads snakes all over her school, causing her fellow students a lot of understandable distress. There's nothing wrong with being weird or unconventional, but taken to an extreme, it can be rather difficult for others to deal with, so one can not really be surprised that she doesn't have any other friends, or that her mother, trying to look out for her best interests, sends her to a miserable summer camp so that she can learn to be more practical and, dare I say it, ordinary. Luce means well, she really does, but there's a difference between being individualistic, which is good to a certain extent, and being oblivious to the needs of others. Not particularly considering, for instance, that the other students might not quite like having to escape from a bunch of snakes. When her mother sends her away, Luce is stuck between two inadvisable paths: childish, anarchic wildness and soul-draining, arid conformism. When Luce escapes to the Boiling Isles, she is mostly looking for a way to escape the latter path, but what she finds instead is a way to transcend that binary and not have to make that choice. She retains her defiant and creative spirit while also gradually becoming a more mature and responsible and thoughtful person who knows how to help those around her. Not coincidentally, she also becomes significantly less lonely in the Boiling Isles. Instead of being an outcast, she has a loving and rowdy foster family. She has a doting girlfriend. She has a lot of support from friends who care about her, and she's even able to strike up a pretty strong connection with the sullen outcast and loner, Hunter. The two of them have a much stronger connection than Hunter has with pretty much anyone else. When Luce comes to the Boiling Isles, she has a specific idea of what she believes a fantastical world to be. And the world she stumbles into quickly disabuses her of these notions. It's not fun and games. It's not cheap escapism. But what Luce gradually gains from the Boiling Isles is a much deeper sense of appreciation than that shallow rush of being in a fantastical world. The world does help her, not by simply giving her what she wants, but by encouraging her to be a better person. Luce believes that despite the dangers of the Boiling Isles, that it is a much more comfortable and hospitable environment for her than Earth was, and one can really understand why. She was miserable on Earth, and one could argue that this is what caused her to act out as much as she did, instead of being a result of people not liking her because she acts out like she does. When Luce has the option at the end of the show's first episode to either stay in the Boiling Isles or return to Earth, she chooses to stay. And that is a decision that matters. It dictates the path her life goes on from that point onward. And while she misses her mom, especially in Season 2 when she finds herself unable to go to Earth, she never really regrets the decision to stay in the Boiling Isles. She knows it is a much healthier environment for her than Earth was. She knows she's thriving on the Boiling Isles in a way that she wasn't on Earth. And we should really think about why this is, because there are a lot of reasons. It is partly because Luce herself has changed as well. it is not simply because everyone on Earth is a tedious, inane, one-dimensional conformist who is threatened by Luce's unconventionality. V kind of proves this in a way. She takes Luce's place after Luce goes to the Boiling Isles. V, not being from Earth, is much more of an outsider than Luce was at home, and Luce is also much more of an extrovert than V. V is really timid and introverted. By all accounts, V should have an even worse time on Earth than Luce did, and yet that's not the case. V has found herself a nice group of friends. So, while we should empathize with Luce's feelings toward her life on Earth, we should also not believe that everyone on Earth is simply a gray, conformist, unthinking blob. Now, I am emphatically not saying that Luce is to blame for her own isolation and loneliness back in Connecticut, but I am saying a lot of her behavior back before she went to the Boiling Isles could be read as antisocial by a lot of people, and it's not especially surprising that a lot of people stayed away from her back in Connecticut. Now, why does she have an easier time making friends in the Boiling Isles? Well, that's partly because she's given a more stable and nurturing environment. Now, Camilla tried her best. She's a very caring mom. But King and Ida gave her the kind of environment that she really needed, a place where she could be a little weirder, a little wilder, while also being forced to think about the consequences of her actions, because she has to actually experience those consequences. Luce has an easier time making friends in the Boiling Isles, in part because she is a better person than she was on Earth. She's more selfless, and she's more introspective. I'm not saying she was a bad person on Earth, but I am saying she has become a lot more thoughtful. Back on Earth, the worst thing that could happen to her was that she would have to go to the principal's office, which it appears she had to do quite a lot. In the Boiling Isles, there are real consequences, and the protection even Ida can offer her is not absolute. Luce has to be more responsible. She has to consider the effects her actions are going to have, not only on herself and her own well-being, but also on the lives of others. Now, there are times when her vehement desire to be the responsible one can backfire a little, as we see in Episode 1, Season 2. But even then, her heart is in the right place. She is much more focused on the world outside her own little slice of experience in a way that she really wasn't in Connecticut. She doesn't only want to indulge her weirdness for her own enjoyment. Increasingly, she learns to temper that weirdness, not get rid of it entirely, but to use it in a productive way to stand up for her own ideals and convictions when she really believes she's in the right, even though doing so makes her an outsider and a disruptor to all senses of decorum and politesse. Her relationship with Amity is a key example of this. Back in Season 1, Amity is so obsessed with being a good little obedient daughter. She's someone who is willing to submit to her parents' wishes and orders, not because she believes her parents are right, but because she's afraid of being punished. Though at first she is antagonistic toward Luce in the first couple meetings, it's pretty clear early on, even, that she's envious of Luce, that she admires Luce, and part of her wants to be a little more like Luce, a little more freewheeling, a little more spontaneous, a little more just willing to act out of her own feelings and convictions instead of submitting to the decorum and etiquette that she's expected to embody. Gradually, Amity rebels against her parents and claims her own sense of identity. The heady rush of freedom is wondrous and intoxicating for Amity, compared to that joy of not just being with Luce, not just being free from her parents, but being able to decide for herself what she wants to be. Compared to that, her parents' retribution means nothing. Luce has similar effects on Hunter, even though Hunter is trapped in a far more claustrophobic and self-aggrandizing familial structure than Amity ever was. When Luce is helping Amity or Hunter, she demonstrates the person she has become in the Boiling Isles. She is someone who is able to maintain the unconventional spirit she has always had, while using that spirit in a more productive way and helping those around her really come into their own and really become their fullest selves. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Owl House. I can't wait to see what they have in store for us in Season 2B. I love a show that clearly cares about and admires its protagonist while also pushing that protagonist to grow and become a better person. The Owl House gets that balance right. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. That I can promise you. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.